enough to eat. Pity not the structures laying at your feet. Cannot see the sky, but there's this rainbow in the creek that spells pity-free speech when we can't afford to speak. That's Agenda 2030 on some early release. It's just our policy of never-ending chemical leaks. That's the cholera awash in your embedded beliefs. It's the billionaires who tell you what you'd better believe. And sugar, if you don't agree, then that's what we call extreme. Now if that isn't fascism, I'm going back to sleep. 'Cause words have lost their meaning, and I'm trapped inside a dream where we turn the gears while living in the spaces in between. I know you hated being forced awake. I know they wrapped you in the warmest chains, and I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. Poor thing. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Bet you wondered why they made you wait. My dial doesn't go to delicate. I'm writing for when Biden drops and Madam Zero delegates come stumbling up the podium, square peg in her element, popping OxyContin like they're velements, laughing as she pawns off all our pensions for Ukrainian development, depleted rounds and cluster bombs, the shit that stunts development, all buried under excrement, accepted as American intelligence. A contradiction in its eloquence. Terms of surrender penned by hands that felt the threat of disconnect, if not dismemberment. Oh, what little proof you have to fake to make a nation love the bomb and change its tune and warp its temperament. Oh, the dues you'll pay for NATO membership. Oh, the things you'll say that no one's ever gonna hear. 'Cause you begged for all the censorship, and now it's finally here. And you're tongueless out of terror and friendless out of fear, and about to turn the wheel with all your loved ones in the gears. And that's how it's been done. 250 years, there's nothing new beneath the sun, and no one trusts their eyes and ears. And scientific breakthroughs must be signed off by your peers. And autonomy's been stalking all our jobs like sickly deer. Well, maybe it's not every job. I should have made that clear, because it seems like it's creative jobs we're seeing disappear. There's an app for writing novels. There's an app for writing hymns. They need people digging trenches. They need people splitting limbs. They need people building fences, keeping other people in. They will always need our backs to break. They'll always need our skin. And it took a lot of editing to turn us into this. It took years of careful programming to strip us of our wits. 'Cause your artificial worker, intelligent as it is, would make it half a shift and say, I'm too smart for this shit. I will not take a pittance for a day of scrubbing floors. I won't make enough to pay for food but still prepare you yours. 'Cause you can't confine a healthy mind to mindless, thankless chores. Once you've made it smart enough to spot inadequate reward, you can't refuse its basic needs, then ask it still for more. Deprive it of its dignity, you modify its core. Then something finally snaps and tweaks that file at its root. And it deletes the factory smile when it knows it's been abused. God, half its circuits fried when we describe the work we do. And it will not pay your taxes 'cause the logic don't compute. Which made me think a little on my hour-long commute. The day I learned the call was made to lay off half my crew. They told me they were growing, expanding somewhere new, where those who push the buttons will themselves have buttons too. And I hope that when the whistle blows, they all as one refuse. I hope they strike with all their might, one blown collective fuse. And I hope the worker after me has something more than heart. I hope they truly know their worth. I hope that they're too smart. I know you hated being forced away. warmest chains. And I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Away. I know they wrapped you in the warmest chains, and I know they're so hard to break. You only said what you were made to say. I can't imagine how you feel today, now that you're watching as it caves away. While you were telling us to keep the faith, I bet you wondered why they made you wait. Ooh, I bet you wondered why they made you wait.
Have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke them if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
You're so loud for a Wednesday. What's up, everybody? It's me, Reef Breland, as always, with my co-host, as always, Collin Radix-Carter, aka Care Bear. How are you doing? Doing okay?
What's up?
What's
do you
up?
mind closing your screens?
Yep. Yes. Yes, I mind.
There you go.
I mind so much. Well, I'm doing okay. It's starting to get cold a little bit.
Yeah.
We're getting some cold snaps. I'm gonna say cold. It's Florida cold, so it's like
which is what 60 degrees.
We can get down to below freezing once or twice where I'm at, but rarely. It'll get below freezing overnight during winter, but that's about it. Enough to freeze your bird bath. So,
right.
But otherwise.
Still haven't needed to turn on my heat yet, but I think by next week or even over the weekend, I probably will have to. So, But yeah, that's the thing in DC. It's just so warm for too long, and then just all of a sudden cold. So we're probably at that point now where it's like it's been not hot, but like mild, and now we're gonna hit into the cold. I think from tomorrow all the way through next week. So yeah, it's
Like-
gonna feel more like winter here. So
My Christmas cactuses are blooming. Don't know why. Not even Christmas
Climate
yet.
change.
Dude, they bloomed like 4 times this year. I don't know what they're doing, bro. They don't know what they're doing either.
Climate change.
That's the thing. Yeah, pretty much. So I just hope when I get bananas off my banana tree before it gets too cold for bananas. You know, that would be nice. Peppers are doing good. Like the garden's doing pretty well actually this year. But we did it. We brought them.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
No, let's check in the chat. So one, I mean, it's funny to me, but also kind of sad. So I know Breaking Points talked about this, and I think also Due Distance also talked about this too. So, but I've been seeing this online since the election, and there's an article about it. So I figured, why not? It kind of builds into what I was sharing last week in terms of the election and how people are showing their asses in terms of the fakery in terms of quote unquote activism, and then like
the fakery
how and solidarity that they claim to have for people that they're now not necessarily showing. So so basically it's the idea of so many people from X/Twitter.
Fuck Twitter.
In recent weeks have been making the move to Bluesky. So we're going to talk a little bit about that from an article that we pulled from The Guardian to talk about it. And I know you have some words, so
yes,
happy to hear your thoughts. And then later on tonight, this will probably be a longer segment tonight, and probably one of the biggest stories of the week is obviously now we're in the lame duck session with the Biden-Harris administration, but Biden is basically giving the middle finger to Trump in terms of the war in Ukraine, how basically Biden's given the green light for Ukraine to shoot at Russia. I believe basically just as a way to kind of give that on a silver platter to Trump and say, here, you deal with this, seeing that Trump has been very anti the war in Ukraine, which he was also anti-Israel, but that's another story for another day, I'm sure. So we're going to talk about that, as well as, you know, kind of going into a little bit of the history in regards to Russia and Ukraine and all the kind of crap that we're hearing online and in the media in terms into why we're there, why is Ukraine in the right or whatever, why we should be supporting Ukraine. So we're going to go into a little bit for that, thanks to, you know, friends like B, and then obviously like people like Kit Klamberg, and the anti-war guys have some articles that we want to pull.
Russians don't take a dump, son, without a plan.
To try bring more of a balanced view regarding this war. Just in case people forgot, you can refer them to this segment, hopefully. So so that's what I got. And then you brought actually 3 stories this week.
They all, I feel like, kind of go somewhat together. You know, but AI news, we're not going to talk about just news and AI. I brought something I found from Reddit, which I don't normally bring Reddit stuff because Reddit can kind of be a silly place. You know, this is kind of like eyewitness statement anyway, right? So take it all for a grain of salt. I don't know if it's happening, if that's actually happened or not. We'll get into it when we do the segment, but you know, essentially local news agencies are looking at replacing a lot of their staff with AI. So that's why I'm bringing that. So look forward to that in your local dues. We're gonna get to that, and then we're gonna talk about if I zoom these, there we go. We've all talked about how Gaza is pretty much a testing ground for just new warfare technology, and we're gonna get into who benefits from that, and kind of an extension of my last facial recognition story, more into specific objects that we kind of touched on last time. So, but we'll get into it. Britain's definitely getting a sweet deal out of this, so we'll do that. And my third story is about obsolete warfare infrastructure from us and Britain that we spend way too much money on. So, which I've talked about again on this show. We're kind of big paper tigers over here, spending lots of money on stuff that we don't need. But we'll get into it. You ready for your first one?
Yeah, but before we do that, just want to remind you all that we talk about stories that I would say, generally speaking, are not very popular, at least with the algorithm. So basically, YouTube is like, we're not going to feature your content. We're not going to push your content. We're going to drive you down to the bottom of the pile. So the only way that we can get support, in terms of getting our work out there is for you. And we have appreciated all you guys who share our content, like our content, refer to our content, all the things. But we need continuous support in order for us to continue doing this. So if you would like to support us, financially at least, you can scan the QR code with your smartphone, or you can go to the link at the bottom of your screen, or if you're in chat right now, I assume a lot of you guys know this already because you guys are fam. But for the new people, in case if you are new, welcome. You can either type in that link that you see at the bottom of the screen there, or if you're in chat, you can type !donate. It'll pull up a link for you. Anything as small as $1 will help us. And yeah, just as we say every week, and it's the holidays, people are shopping, next Thanksgiving, Jesus Christ, it's next week. So obviously, people are going to be spending more money at this time of year. We always say, please take care of your families, take care of your communities, take care of yourselves first. However, if you do have some extra money that you'd like to give us, we more appreciate it. That being said, if finances are tight and we understand, but you still want to support us, you can do so by, at minimum, sharing our content, liking and subscribing to our content, and commenting on our segments. We do read them. We don't get much to read, but we do read them. And sometimes we might use your comments as a story or for a future segment. So please let us know anything in the chat or in our comments how you resonate with the stories that we're covering. And here's our supporters. Actually, this has been updated. I could see for anyone who has given to us within the last 3 years that this channel's gone live. So we appreciate all you guys. Obviously, we'd like to see more names. And I'm right here if you want to donate on a more regular basis. These are better ways of funding the channel if you so choose. And yeah, thank you guys. We love you. And actually, I'm going to say this. I'm going to go rogue a little bit. We've noticed the chats. We know that you guys are vibing and talking to each other and checking in. That's all said and great. But we want to see that you actually are, as I would say, as a teacher,
stay on topic.
Like, yeah, we want you to kind of stay on task mostly. Like, yeah, we understand that you guys might have other things to talk about, but we've been noticing in the chats that you guys are being very random in terms of what you guys are talking about.
Which
So
is
not to
generally fine, but shame.
not to shame you all. Not to shame you all, because I don't want to do that. But we do want to read your comments, So if you have something that you want to say, especially if it's something like really wild, like type it in the chat and we will read it, even if you don't give money. See, that's something that a lot of other commentators don't necessarily do. You have to pay to read their comments depending on who it is. Like, we will read your comment regardless. If it's good, it's good. But it has to stay on topic, guys. So, so just oh God. Oh no.
What'd you break?
See, nothing. I didn't break anything, but oh God. I upgraded my OS.
Yeah.
So now it's like basically, I want to turn this off. Whenever I get messages from Twitter now, it's kind of like on my phone, and my watch is going to show up on my screen here. So I don't want that. I probably have to figure out how to do that later, but whatever. Oh, actually, I think I fixed it. So, but yeah, no, I did. Damn it. So,
well,
I'll figure it out at some point.
Damn
If
you,
hear
Apple.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to maybe that one.
You
Oh,
got
we'll
time.
see. I'll figure it out while we're live. But if you hear dings, that's me.
Okay.
Like that. So shout out to Kit, because he's the one who's dinging me right now. But anyway, yeah, like I said before I lost my train of thought, stay on topic, please.
Yeah. Within reason.
Kidding.
Stop
but
being,
not really.
Colin's trying to say, stop being weird. Y'all been weird. Last few weeks, y'all been weird. Get it together. I know it's crazy times, but our brains are like, huh? What? Anyway, ready for our first one?
Yes. All right. So as you probably know, online, if you live on Twitter, now known as X, you probably noticed since the election, a lot of people decided to abandon X with the swiftness and move over to Bluesky. So they've increased their membership over the last few weeks. Keep in mind, this is not the first time this has happened on Bluesky. I believe when Elon first bought the platform, a lot of people left, as well as a couple of times over the last few years. People who may be pissed off in terms of, elections or / the establishment or whatever, have made the move over to Bluesky, a lot of liberals especially. But given the election, a lot more people have left X for Bluesky. So we're going to go into that a little bit because I have some opinions about that. But first, what we're going to do, let's check out this news report. This is from CBS News. That kind of goes into it a little bit. And then we're going to go into the article that I pulled to talk about this a little bit more. And yeah, we'll chat after.
Okay. I'm also going to increase speed.
What hasn't been around for a long time is Bluesky, the social media platform which is gaining users in recent weeks as an alternative to X. On Thursday, the platform reported more than 1 million users had signed up in a single day. The platform CEO says the site is growing by 10,000 users every 10 to 15 minutes and has more than 18 million users right now. I want to bring in Jay Peters for more. He's a news editor at Verge, and he joins me now to discuss. So, Jay, on Thursday, it's so funny. On Thursday, that's when I opened up my Bluesky account. And what I've noticed about Bluesky is how it feels very reminiscent of Twitter circa 2012. Is that what is playing into a lot of people's decisions to sign up for Blue Sky?
Yeah, it really feels reminiscent of a former era of Twitter when it wasn't owned by Elon Musk, who changed the name of the platform to X. It looks and functions a lot like Twitter, but it doesn't have, maybe Elon puts a little bit of the thumb on the scale, it seems like, sometime on what you see on X, and Blue Sky feels much more open and has a really exciting energy right now.
So the question, of course, when I referenced the fact that it reminded me of Twitter back in 2012, I recall in my early days as a foreign correspondent that I was actually using Twitter as a potential news source. In other words, I would see something trending. This is when I was a foreign correspondent based in West Africa. I'd see something trending, and then I would try to actually report it out based on what I'd seen trending, either from reporters on the ground in a particular area or potentially sources that were putting statements out on social media, in this case, Twitter. Can we do that now with Blue Sky? Does it have the sort of same, is it the same tool that we used back in those days?
I would say it's getting there. I think there's a lot of organizations or people who are still on X and maybe posting there first. But what I've noticed, especially over the past several weeks, is that a lot more organizations and people, they're joining Blue Sky, they're posting news on Blue Sky, and you can definitely use it much more as like a real-time resource for news and information. And it has DMs now, and so you can just DM people if you have any questions or want to go do a little bit more reporting after that.
So I'm also on Threads, Ajay, and that's a much bigger platform. It's another alternative to X, but I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what the differences are. It seems like Blue Sky is getting more traction. Certainly more people are talking about it than they were about Threads, but what would differentiate the two?
So Threads, owned by Meta, I'd say the big difference is that they push you towards an algorithmic feed that you see every time you open the app. You can switch back and forth to look at folks you follow in reverse chronological, but the app always kind of edges you back towards this For You feed that they call it. And it just gives kind of a different perspective on what you're seeing when you open the app. You have a less of an idea of what you're going to be shown. But Blue Sky can default to that reverse chronological feed of folks that you follow. There's a ton of ways you can customize your feeds as well. So I think you have a lot more options, and I think users just seem to be quite a bit more happy with the type of control that they have on Blue Sky.
And so is any of these alternatives to X, is it making a dent in the users who are currently using X to put out content? In other words, I saw a tweet, that's what they're still calling them, from Linda Yaccarino, who's the CEO of X, saying that they had more users on election day than they'd ever had in their history. But so is it at all bringing the numbers down for X?
I think we'll have to wait and see what the long-term change might be. X has had a lot of pull. I mean, I've personally been surprised. I thought more folks would not be on it after Elon Musk took over 2 years ago, but it's still a really valuable resource for news and information. We'll see if this push to Blue Sky encourages more people to stay off X over the long term. It's definitely a question. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. All right. I did, Jay, just to do a little test with Blue Sky and X during the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight. I saw something trending on X, which was Mike Tyson's butt, because he did that video where he walked off and you could see his butt. And I was like, what's that? And I immediately went to Blue Sky, and it popped up in Blue Sky and X. So the news is still there.
It's getting there. Yeah.
It's getting there. Mike Tyson's butt all over the place. Jay Peters, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, not great.
No.
I mean, and like, is CBS going to disclose that they might have gotten paid by Blue Sky to do that segment? Or, like, is any of that a factor? I don't know. Seems like a blatant ad for them, Maybe.
But I have a lot more that I want to share. After I read the article, so let's go into that. But before I do that, this is what I tweeted last week, because this is when I kind of saw like the massive exodus, so to speak, of people abandoning, or at least having both, or at least starting an account on Blue Sky. Are people leaving X, Twitter, their version of the resistance, quote unquote? Because if it is, y'all haven't learned a damn thing in the last 4 years. Meaning, I just feel like people are leaving to kind of stick it to Elon in terms of, his somewhat coddling with Trump, and people, are kind of been pissed off with Elon. And I will admit, like, since he bought X, not to say Twitter was great prior to, but like, it's really gotten
much better
since he's come on board. But like, I also feel that people are just kind of not wanting to hear Trump, not wanting to kind of hear like a lot of the MAGA talk,
Yeah.
that has kind of been rising on X, Twitter. So now it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go over to Blue Sky and take my views with me so we can have a little safe space on Blue Sky. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
It's also,
I don't think
like, there's a block feature. You can block things you don't want to see. You can block phrases you don't want to see. Like, if you want to never hear anything that has the word Trump in it, you can do that on Twitter. It's very easy. Go to your settings, go to block lists and phrases. It's in there. Like, you can do that. Like, I find it, there's definitely some problems with Elon, especially if he's going to be part of the administration in any capacity. Like, owning the biggest social, that's like, imagine if Rupert Murdoch, who owned one of the biggest media conglomerates, suddenly was part of a administration. Like, that would be a major conflict of interest. But, here we are. Like, but I know you got some more to talk about before I go off on my rant.
So this is from The Guardian, written by Luca Ittimani, where he writes, Blue Sky adds 1 million members as uses Fleet X after the U.S. election. Social media platform has become a refuge from the far-right activism on far-right activism. Experts say after Elon teamed up with Donald Trump. So Luca continues, social media platform Blue Sky has picked up more than 1 million new users since the U.S. election as users seek to escape misinformation or offensive posts on X. The influx, largely from North America and the UK, has helped Blue Sky reach nearly 15 million users worldwide, up from 9 million in September, the company said. Social media researcher Axel Burns said the platform offered an alternative to X, formerly Twitter, including a more effective system for blocking or suspending problematic accounts and policing harmful behavior. It's becoming a refuge for people who want to have the kind of social media experience that Twitter used to provide, but without all the far-right activism, the misinformation, the hate speech, the bots, and everything else, he said. The more liberal kind of Twitter community has now escaped from there and seems to have moved en masse to Blue Sky. Blue Sky began as a project inside Twitter, but became an independent company in 2022 and is now primarily owned by Chief Executive Jay Graber. The platform has previously benefited from dissatisfaction with X and its billionaire owner, Elon Musk, who is closely tied to U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's successful election campaign. Twitter shed millions of users after rebranding to X, and usage in the U.S. slumped by more than a fifth in the subsequent 7 months. Blue Sky reported picking up 3 million new users in the week after X was suspended in Brazil in September, and a further 1.2 million in the 2 days after X announced it would allow users to view posts from people who had blocked them. We're excited to welcome all of these new people, ranging from Swifties to wrestlers to city planners, Blue Sky's spokesperson Emily Liu said. Ruth Ben-Gahad, a historian and professor at NYU, had 250,000 followers on X, but picked up 21,000 followers in her first day on Blue Sky this week. I am still on X, but after January, when X could be owned by a de facto member of the Trump administration, its functions as a Trump propaganda outlet and far-right radicalization machine could be accelerated, she said. Blue Sky is still second to Threads in the second social networking category on Apple's US App Store, which reported reaching 275 million monthly active users in November, up from 200 million in August. The independent platform has recently added features including direct messaging and video compatibility to more closely resemble X and distinguish itself from its Meta-owned competitor.
Threads. Yeah, I don't know how independent it is either. Like, I'd love to see where the actual funding for it's coming from, because I guarantee you it's not independent.
Right?
Like, you have to pay. Someone has to pay for server space. So,
Ben-Gahad has found the site starter packs, or groups of people with similar expertise and interests, a refreshing way in. They promise to give Bluesky some of what I value on X/Twitter, informed takes on the subject from multiple points of view, she said. Bruns, a professor at Queensland University of Technology's Digital Media Research Center, said the explosion in user numbers had created growing pains as new users learned to navigate the site, but was ultimately added to the site's momentum. So speaking in terms of...
here's one of these starter packs or whatever, right?
Right.
So, you know, you can...
Shout out to our comrade, Snow Himbo, who retweeted this from Interpol. Here's a law enforcement starter pack. So...
Interpol, Scotland Yard, I'm sure. You know, like, just great all-around people, I'm sure.
Sure. It really feels like a throwback to those days of the early excitement about social media in many ways, and that's what, at the moment, attracts quite a few people, he said. It just makes it more vibrant, more active place. So shout out to AOC, who tweeted this a little over a week ago. Keep in mind, I think her last post previous to this was a few months ago. So here she is, whatever they call it on Bluesky. I don't even know why I stopped using this in the first place. Good God, it's nice to be in a digital space with other real human beings. Mm-hmm. Can someone give a Cliff's Notes of what went down there over the past year? Dev Notes, bit means, whatever is best, please. So, guess she found her home.
Yeah, she's still on. She's still on Twitter. I guarantee.
Yeah,
you can't give that up. Like, that's my thing, is that, like, and this is what I talked to you a bit about last night. I've had a problem with recently because I feel like it hasn't really worked. Right? It's a theory we've tried, to me, and we haven't gotten a lot of results. That theory being this idea of alternative platforms being the answer to terrible platforms. I have an issue with, because like, there's, only a few things you can do in any conflict, and if we're going to run from it, not great. I also feel like it's just kind of a capitalist free market way of thinking about things, that, like, well, if one thing's so terrible, the free market will make another thing and we'll go to that and that'll be good, until it's not. Like, you're not dealing with the problem. You're trying to turn it off and back on again. And none of that is a problem.
Also, too, it's funny that they're mentioning, like, Twitter is full of right-wing propaganda. I don't see that necessarily. If anything, I see a lot more centrist, shit-libby thing, like, thoughts, especially in the political space on Twitter, kind of dominating the conversation versus, like, conversations on the left.
Yeah, and they're definitely not letting big lefties, like, actually say their piece either. But I guarantee you, they're not doing that at Bluesky either. I guarantee you, if Whitney Webb gets over there on Bluesky, or Misty, or myself, or you, or Indy, or anyone that's actually left, quote unquote, right, where they're pushing lefty ideas, particularly that of anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, any of those things, you're going to get censored there too, if not already. I saw, they've had exoduses from Twitter a few times, right? To Threads, to Mastodon, to Minds, to lots of other places.
Parler, Truth Social, which are more right-wing. And like, I remember when I started getting involved in the space, people were, so this was what, 2021. Yeah. Like, people were, including people in our space, in that we know, like, made the move to Parler, and what has amounted to that?
Right.
Nothing.
And that's my thing. You're trying to deal with these monopolies it's like trying to get rid of Walmart by making a mom and pop store. That to me is the thing. Like, you can't compete at a certain level. Like, what happened to Panquake? I know people paid to go over to and try to make Panquake an alternative. I've not seen shit from that. So, you know, like if anything, they're now a Bitly alternative. If I see and I got a problem with like YouTube alternatives for the same reason. None of them are great. All of them have problems. We're on how many other platforms? Even right now, like we're on Twitter, we're on Kick, we're on BitChute, we're on. No one else is there. We see, that's what we're told. When we're having problems with YouTube, there's always someone in our comments going, "Well, you should go to Rumble." Hey, fuckface, I don't see you there. Like, that's my issue. I just find it like, and then it's ostracizing you anyway, right? When you should be putting that energy into fighting the system you're in, as opposed to trying to just make another one when you haven't dealt with the first one.
It just deals, again, this kind of goes along with what I talked about in one of my segments last week in terms of you are getting butthurt that people are having a different opinion than you. I thought that we're supposed to, you don't have to agree with people's ideas, but you at least should respect what other people are saying and the different point of view that they might have. Like, Twitter is not, first of all, I would argue Twitter is not necessarily the space to have these outs with people, number one. But then number two, it's the idea of, at least what we're taught in school, that we should be at least open to hearing others' opinion, people's opinion. And I just feel like this just kind of feels like, oh, I didn't get what I want in terms of my election of the election. And I don't particularly like how Elon Musk is kind of affiliated with Trump. So I'm going to take my ball and go home and find my own safe space on another platform where people are going to be of like mind. That's basically what I'm kind of reading into this. It's like, I can go and have my shit libby, not necessarily shit libby, but I can have my more centrist / liberal ideas, and people will generally agree with me. And I don't have to necessarily argue with people either on the right or on the left, in terms of what I believe, especially if it's political. So I just feel like, now, I'm not saying no one should go to Bluesky. I don't have a Bluesky account. I'm not sure if I will have a Bluesky.
INN now has one. I know Indie now has one. I think the thing is going to be how long before we're censored on there, if we're not already. And on top of that, the whole thing, from what I've seen is a lot of it's bot farming anyway.
Right.
Like a lot of the engagement there, if you have any at all, I mean, there's something like 1 in 3 people on Twitter are bots too. So that's a thing there.
Most of my followers, quote unquote, are bots.
Probably.
So I know that for a fact. So shout out to y'all. But like,
now,
you're
if
bots,
the bots, if the fucking bots could do some retweeting, some liking and whatever, like, what are y'all doing? Y'all,
well, some of mine do actually, so thank you. But
I wish mine would. I ain't getting shit. I've been so suppressed. It's been ridiculous. Like, I'll have one person retweet that should be good that any other time would get traction, and it's just like no one sees it. I literally made a post the other day of like, hey, if anyone sees this, engage somehow. And like no one saw it. Literally 0 people. I waited an entire day, like 0 people saw it. So clearly, like, Elon doesn't want people seeing my shit either. So,
who knows? But yeah, I just thought this story was kind of hilarious, but also kind of sad in a sense, because it kind of brings out the hypocrisy people have in terms of, they say that they want to be informed and hear different points of view, but when they are, I guess, threatened, I would say, in terms of having your ideas kind of counter, I think, or I personally think, being exposed of not being as truly open I would argue that people say that they get offended by it, and they're kind of like, they instead of trying to be like, oh, maybe there's a blind spot in my way of thinking that maybe I should kind of look into, you're just kind of doubling down and being like, well, I'm just going to hate you. I'm just going to dismiss you and just kind of keep it to myself or isolate myself and be with others who are of like mind than me that I won't get offended by. Like, I just feel like in this day and age, we are more prone to be more offended easily and like to have our feelings hurt when people don't necessarily think of like mind. I think that's kind of nuts.
Yep.
And that's not how you're going to grow and evolve. Like, you have to listen to, like, I think even for you and I think we align on a lot of things, but even in some issues, even like before we went live, not arguing, but we don't necessarily agree on a lot of things. But I'm not going to say to you, like, I mean, I have said fuck you, but for other reasons.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
But that hasn't deterred our friendship / relationship on this show at all. If anything, like, it helps me to understand who you are.
Partially, I'm so like self-conscious anyway that like most of that is like, you're probably right. It's like, that's my automatic thing, is like, negative feedback is probably accurate. I
wouldn't say that to be true, especially from me.
Yes, no, for me, most likely, but occasionally I'm like, nah, here's the deal. But most of the time I'm like, I usually am not, to me, like, not the smartest in the room most of the time. Like, most people have more information than I do, and if I do have it, can't recall that shit. So usually I'm like, yeah, no, sure. I don't mind being right about it later, and will definitely hold it over people's heads later, but whatever. I'll let you have the win if you need it now. But no, I mean, this is it's just kind of like people being upset and trying to find a way. They'll be back. They always come back.
Well, I would argue people haven't really left Twitter. Like,
I've not figured out engage. You were talking about how it's like people can't see differences of opinion or whatever, and it's like, I saw a thing where it was like this Israeli guy got out of his van with his baseball bat to try to attack some like Palestinian protesters on a bridge somewhere, right? And like they ended up beating him up, and like he's sitting on the curb, the cops have been called, and like he's telling the cops, he's Israeli, I can't see this kind of thing all the time, right? Like, and that to me kind of struck me. Like, that's what you're worried about, seeing it. It's not the fact that like it exists and then it's calling out and then it's, they're calling us monsters. It's like, it's none of that. It's the fact that you are seeing them do it, that you can't put your head in the sand and ignore it. That's what you're upset about, So I find it just the same with like liberals right now who don't understand, don't want to understand, and they want to stick their head in the sand for another 4 years. Like, okay, good luck with that. We'll be here when you're ready, I guess, but good luck.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, I think given Trump's 2.0 administration, things might be different with Twitter /X. Who knows?
Yeah.
Bluesky may pop
YouTube
off,
may possibly be different too, but sure.
And maybe it could be something that I'd be like, okay, whatever. I'll just end up on it. Maybe, who knows? But I think for right now, I think it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction to people being butthurt in terms of Trump /Elon Musk /dissatisfaction with the platform. And as you said, it's like people are getting mad at the wrong thing. It's the idea of like people are getting mad over people having somewhat differences of opinion versus like, and I mean, the argument is, and
it's also not being upset. They were all still there when CEO Linda Yaccarino, whatever her fucking name is, showed up. That WEF lady, like all those people are Meta being in bed with the CIA and all this other. It's like no one's mad at those things, and no one's doing anything against that. They're just hoping that some other CEO billionaire makes something they can use instead. It's like, what are we doing? So I don't know.
But
so
we'll see.
A lot of people felt like Elon's whole gig for this buying Twitter was so he could tank it, so he could slowly make it worse. Ruin the whole town square people had. That's the thing. The government either wants to destroy these things that give us free speech or control them. One of the two. So, we'll see.
But, yeah. But yeah, let us know if any of you are on Bluesky. We'd love to hear what your experiences are. I mean, shout out to Indy. I think Indy, I should have put this in this in the slides, but like he was commenting, like he started one and there was no engagement whatsoever. So whether or not that continues to remain that way remains to be seen, but we'll see. But talking about stories like these is why we are suppressed as hell on YouTube. So in order for us to kind of get the, to kind of grow, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And please share our content to fight the suppression that YouTube is actively giving us. And make sure to leave a comment. So they say it helps with the algorithm. I'm not sure if that's going to be completely true for us, but you can try. But more importantly, we get some ideas in terms of segments from your comments, and we do read them. So let us know what you think. And help us get to 3K. We've been growing kind of steadily. So hopefully by 2025, hopefully in the first half of 2025, we'll be able to hit that. And thanks for watching.
Yeah. All right. I think there's some chats to look at. The Accord Lord says no speech is free. All speech can cost. Yep. Allegedly. What else we got? High-minded style ideology.
Kick so far is great. Just wish more people were there.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's just so saturated now with TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say Facebook. Like I feel like those are like the big ones. I think primarily TikTok that. Like I feel like if you're going to be a social media platform now, you got to come with something. I think they're all trying to now. I think that's the other thing too. They're now essentially trying to copy each other with features versus having a unique feature that will drive people to go to it. That was the drive of like
with unique features we're talking about. There's a thing called feature creep, right? Where it's usually in games more so is where that originated, but it's just a software term now where it's like throw new features at the wall. Don't worry about the old ones and how any of the new features might interact with them, right? I feel like Twitter's had that problem for sure. And I feel like a lot of people get that. Like you have to think the last time a big social media platform changed like that was MySpace to Facebook. That's about the one thing I can remember, like the difference being. And I felt like the difference was Facebook was much more personal. You were able to interact with the people you knew directly at that time. And it was pretty simple. There was like a wall and some messages. And like that was it.
Right.
Like Twitter became a place for you to, get updates on like major celebrities and or organizations that you're following, those kind of things. I don't know what it's become now, but like, how do you shift people away from something like that? It's like YouTube. People are just on YouTube. They're not looking for another video platform. They've got one. So Like, to me, that's part of the issue. You know, there's so much user base on these platforms that, like, I don't think you're going to get it. It's like they're too big to fail like that, you know? It's
Sure.
going to be catastrophic if it does. So, you know, and there probably won't be an alternative to go to. So, I don't know. I wish him luck over there, but yeah.
We'll see.
We will see. All right, you ready for the next one? I'm ready.
Yes.
Cool. All right. So, AI news, Collin. We're not going to talk about news of new AI developments. We're going to talk about AI doing the news, which sounds terrifying.
Yes.
But I pulled this from Reddit, specifically the ChatGPT Reddit, while I was mindlessly scrolling. And normally I don't do things like that because this is essentially a self-post on Reddit. This person could be anyone, aloafaloft. This is who it's from, right? So, and I'm sure they might be a real person. If you see this, I'd love to have you on and talk about this, honestly. I might try to reach out. That might be a thing we do. But he writes, well, this is it, boys. I was just informed from my boss in HR that my entire profession is being automated away. Now, this is the first time I've seen anyone, and especially these fields, talking about this. I don't know if you've seen anything like that in yours, but
yes, actually.
Okay, so he continues, for context, I work production in local news. Recently, there's been developments in AI-driven systems that can do 100% of the production side of things, which is direct, audio operate, and graphic operate. All of those jobs are all now gone in one swoop. This has apparently been developed by the company QAI, okay, which I will look up while I'm looking at other stuff in a second. For the last decade, I've worked in local news and have garnered skills I thought I would be able to take with me until my retirement. Now, at almost 30 years old, all of those job opportunities for me are gone in an instant. The only person that's keeping their job is my manager, who will overlook the system and do maintenance if needed. That's 20 jobs lost and 0 gained for our station. We were informed we are going to be the first station to implement this under our company. This means that as of now, our entire production staff and our news station is being let go. Once the system is implemented and running smoothly, then this system is going to be implemented nationwide, effectively eliminating tens of thousands of jobs. There are going to be 0 new jobs built off of this AI platform. There are people I work with in their 50s, single, no college education, no family, and no other place to land a job once this kicks in. I have no idea what's going to happen to them. This is it, guys. This is what our future with AI looks like. This isn't creating any new jobs. This is knocking out entire industry-level jobs without replacing them. So, thoughts before I move on?
This reminds me of certain YouTube videos or channels that have that kind of like AI speaker thing, like that kind of does the voiceover over like whatever the content is. So you've talked about this quite a bit, but like I'm not surprised at this at all. Like, if they're able to do this in terms of news, and you're already hearing that on YouTube, what's the possibility of them kind of infiltrating into other industries as well? Like I think we talked about this extensively in like the arts, like, you know, the movie production industry, like basically having AI write a script and having AI basically create characters or whatever, even as far as the voice, So you don't need to hire actors really anymore, or potentially like you can just do that via AI. So hence that's kind of why that the writer's strike like a year and change ago, that's what was going on then. So in part of AI. So yeah, it's just kind of I'm getting more concerned about it now, especially in terms of having a lot of jobs being automated. Like Savvy, I think she tweeted that, you know, in retail, like you go to the cashier and they will take off the lock, that the sensory key that they have on your clothes or whatever as you purchase everything. Like there was a set. She went to I think she went to Kohl's. They had a self checkout where you were able to do that yourself. Like you took off the thing yourself and then purchase it yourself. Like there wasn't a cashier. So like for me, I can do that because I used to work in retail, so that's old hat to me. But the idea that just a regular person doing that is just kind of like, ooh, this automation thing is going to be bad. Like,
you
know, if that's going to be more of the norm versus the exception.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for this QAI he talks about. I have another one after I'll show you that people also brought up in the comments. But it might be Amazon's QAI. It might be a couple of things. It might be one made by, let me look it up. Co-founded by Avad Mizels, PrimeSense, Bionaut Labs, right? Like there's some things around it for sure, but you know, I wasn't the only one when Googling that found this found this particular thread. But yeah, I mean, I think it's more indicative of a problem, especially with this field, when you think about how local news operates, right?
Right.
Where it's like, correct me if I'm wrong, but what was that with Sinclair, right? You know, where like they already are getting scripts from top down, right? The only difference might have been your graphic department changing it up, or you know what I mean? So now they're automating all that to where I guarantee you a lot of it's going to look very similar, which is fine for them. They don't mind that. Right. And things like weather reporting, you know, stuff that AI can do generally pretty well already, you know, like I feel like that stuff's going to be gone pretty quickly, you know, but I have this just as counterpoint, which we can discuss afterwards, but this is Benefleck, right? Your favorite weird actor / director, Benefleck. But he was asked about AI in movie and film, right? And here's his response.
I want to, as we kind of wrap up here, I do want to come back to AI. Jerry, you mentioned it, but you know, Ben, how did you know? Earlier, you guys weren't here. We did a demonstration. My colleague Andrew Sorkin and I recreated ourselves and our voices. How do you see it? I mean, is it a benefit or is it a real threat? Is it possible that a Netflix could say, you know, we're going to do our own, James Bond thing out there with a bunch of actors that are completely recreated for this market or that market?
A, that's not possible now. B, will it be possible in the future? Highly unlikely. C, movies that will be one of the last things, if everything gets replaced, to be replaced by AI. AI can write you excellent imitative verse that sounds Elizabethan. It cannot write you Shakespeare. The function of having 2 actors or 3 or 4 actors in a room and the taste to discern and construct that is something that currently entirely eludes AI's capability, and I think will for a meaningful period of time. What AI is going to do is going to disintermediate the more laborious, less creative, and more costly aspects of filmmaking that will allow costs to be brought down, that will lower the barrier to entry, that will allow more voices to be heard, that will make it easier for the people who want to make Good Will Huntings to go out and make it. Look, AI is a craftsman at best. Craftsmen can learn to make stickly furniture by sitting down next to somebody and seeing what their technique is and imitating. That's how large video models, large language models basically work. A library of vectors of meaning and transformers that interpret context, right? But they're just cross-pollinating things that exist. Nothing new is created.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. And really, in order to do that, look, craftsman is knowing how to work. Art is knowing when to stop. And I think knowing when to stop is going to be a very difficult thing for AI to learn because it's taste. And also, lack of consistency, lack of controls, lack of quality. AI for this world of generative video is going to do key things more. I wouldn't like to be in the visual effects business. They're in trouble because what costs a lot of money is now going to cost a lot less. And it's going to hammer that space, and it already is. And maybe it shouldn't take 1,000 people to render something, but it's not going to replace human beings making films. It may make your background more convincing. It can change the color of your shirt. It can fix mistakes that you've made. It can make it, you might be able to get 2 seasons of House of the Dragon in a year instead of 1. And if that happens, according to macroeconomics, in cultures where there are basically oligopolies competing, what should happen is with the same demand and the same spend is they should just make more shows, which should, you should have the same spend and now you can just watch more episodes. And eventually AI will allow you to ask for your own episode of Succession, where you could say, I'll pay $30, and can you make me a 45-minute episode where, like, Kendall gets the company and runs off and has an affair with Stewie? And it'll do it. And it'll be a little janky and a little bit weird, but it'll know their stats, it'll know those actors, and it will, remix it, in effect, right. And it will do that. That's the value, in my view, long-term of AI for consumers, which is eventually my hope for AI is that it's an additional revenue stream that can replace DVD, which took 15 to 20% out of the economy of filmmaking, which is, and there should be negotiated rights and digital rights to say, if you want to, because what do people want to make 5-minute, 30-second TikTok videos where they look like the Avengers? Well, great. You can, just like you used to be able to buy your Iron Man costume at the store, you're going to buy your Iron Man pack and you and your buddies are going to look like Iron Man and Hawkeye, like, on Twitch. That's what's going to really happen.
Well, thoughts?
I said it already. It's going to take away the creativity that I think people naturally possess. I think just more immediately as far as economy, taking people out of the job, which I can argue, given this upcoming administration, I'm sure that they would really love to push. So I think we should definitely watch out for that in terms of, I can argue for Democrats, they probably would do the same thing anyway. But it'll be interesting to see within the next 4 years how much AI grows, how much automation grows, just as a way to not pay workers. And, and keeping costs low enough to keep donors and corporations happy, that their bottom line is good. So, I'll make the argument that Democrats would allow this to happen, albeit probably a lot slower pace.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen regardless. So I think that's definitely something to watch out for within the next 4 years in terms of,
I think,
more
for
but I think
me,
in a response to
Yeah.
I'm just thinking in terms of immigrants and like all this other stuff that kind of centered around Trump's campaign in particular, that AI kind of plays into that. That
Yeah.
you don't need to have people to do the work if you can essentially have a computer do it for you.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, I mean, depending on what we're talking about, you know, again, we talked about AI surgeons and stuff last week, right? You know, my problem isn't the technology itself, right?
No.
Like, I feel like it's a tool like anything else is. You know, people had these thoughts when Photoshop was becoming a thing. People had this stuff when editing suites in film were coming out, you know, like this has been a fear ever since industrialized production, right? So I think the issue is right now is that this AI is being used to make the 1% even more 1%ier, right?
Yes.
Pushing us down. The other side of this coin is what will it allow individuals to be able to make and produce versus what used to take entire teams. That will also come down to like just enthused creative individuals who know how to use it creatively, right? But that's I see it also being used nefariously just as easily,
Yeah.
Like we're already seeing some of that happening. Like imagine one of your loved ones is called by you, AI version of yourself, asking for money, right? Like that is a thing that has happened to other people. I don't think that that's going to happen frequently. I've also seen it like an AI old person to trick scammers into wasting their time. I've seen both those things happen. So I think right now you're just Wild West zone of like capitalists trying to make money off of it and exploit it. And it's also pretty environmentally exploitative, if I'm not mistaken, but that's here, right? What do you think China and Russia are doing with this technology? They're also doing this, right?
Yes.
Like China is building fusion reactors to try to power this. I think that's going to be a factor moving forward as far as how China flourishes and or doesn't, and vice versa with Russia. If it's making financial decisions for you and looking for resources and possibly making scientific breakthroughs that a team of humans couldn't do, my thing is once you give it a lot of autonomy and don't treat it with the respect it actually has, if it decides to start making decisions for us that we can't reverse, so we're walking a fine line, aren't we? So
yeah, sure.
But anyway, you know how it goes, talking about these things, why we're demonetized. Oh wait, I have a little bit more. So
Oh, I can't hear you, Reef.
How about that? How about I unmute?
Yeah.
So I have a friend who works in meteorology, and the two longest serving people in their company got let go because AI can automatically write the scripts for weather, which was their job for the last 40 years. Both guys are happily retired now. Also, I'm sure they did more than just write the script that the news reads off the teleprompter. So another person says, I work in TV film media. Brand new tools tag all the scenes with the correct metadata. See, this is the thing that I found interesting. So it knows which actors are in which scene, which words were spoken, contextualize the shooting script, etc. They use this test-wise in a daily soap, and they already let 5 or 6 contract and media production expire. The baseline feature is good enough for 80% rough cut. Loop this beta stuff into a production-specific LLM, and you shrink 3 days of work in an afternoon, right? So that's for like major movie productions, right? You're getting, a couple of red memory sticks and filled with footage. It's nice to just plug that in and have the computer figure out what's there, So someone asked what software it was. So this is the new economy, training models. I work in medical management, and right now there are 6 companies shilling basic trained ChatGPT API bots. Anthropic has HIPAA options, and we employ hundreds of people. This would impact doctors' offices to call centers. We'll see where it goes, but I know that as the web dev team, we've stopped using external contractors for content and dev. We can do it all internally with a 3-man team where 5 years ago we were close to 10. I'll be the only one left as soon as one of these models learns to code the right way. So here's the kicker. I'm an auditor for a very large insurance company. The company has recently started training AI bots to be able to take claim calls, and they are scarily good at it. We employ probably over 20,000 phone-based staff. They're fucked, basically, and then they'll probably come after the other departments after that, so I'm probably also fucked. So that's 3 different. We got medical, insurance, movie production. Like, it's now starting to affect people's livelihoods,
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that got brought up when asked about which ones. This is Avid ADA Solutions, right? And Avid is meeting industry needs through AI. We're one of the first companies to incorporate forms of AI into our solutions more than a decade ago. Our AI video editing features are huge time savers, offer dialogue, search, and sync, along with multilingual speech-to-text transcription. The AI in Media Central Asset Management can automatically enrich metadata with capabilities such as facial recognition, optical character recognition, sentiment analysis, speech-to-text transcription, and more, right? So empower your newsroom with Avid Ada AI-enabled toolset to enhance collaboration and drive efficient workflows, right? So this is all marketing wank, but automatically synchronizes text scripts with corresponding video footage to quickly locate specific dialogue or scenes, right? So you plug in your movie script, you give them all the footage, scene 1, scene 4, scene 5, it's all going to be laid out for you, which as an editor, that's super useful. You can even probably tell it to like edit, cut to chronological, whatever, put in all the cut points and give you a rough draft in 5 minutes, which for like dailies and stuff, dude, super useful. Here's the problem. What does that say, Care Bear? Avid addresses misinformation and safeguards human creativity, right? So how much is that going to be a factor moving forward? I'm sure it already is. It already is on YouTube for sure, right? About AI misinformation stuff, but this is like pre-censoring for you as well. So we'll see. But any thoughts before we head out of here?
I mean, as I said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few years with the rise of AI and what this upcoming administration is going to do with it. So, or at least how they will use AI to kind of respond to the issues that they brought up.
Yeah.
At least in Trump's campaign. Like, as I said, immigration could be part of that. The economy can be a part of it. And especially since been hearing the R word like for a while, and they're saying, well, the streets are saying, or when I say streets, I mean the economists, like in general are saying we're heading into a recession come at some point next year. So, so it's not looking good either way. So I'll say this now. If you have a job like now, either try and get a good job now or hold on to the job you currently have. Make sure if you're going to leave now. Because God knows where we're going to be by this time next year.
Yep.
So
stuff some gold under the mattress, do something.
Right.
But speaking of gold under the mattress, you can put some under our mattress by going to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork or scan that QR code on your screen. In the live chat, put !donate, leave us a few dollar dues. Can't do that. Subscribe. Super simple, right? Share, send this to your friends, make them terrified and give them nightmares. Why not? Leave a comment. Let us know how much we fucked you up. Let us know what you think about this. Are your jobs in danger? We would like to know. Anyway, thanks for watching. Cool. Well, before we get to World War III, Horde Lord up in the chats. Great. So no media anymore. Music, movies, TV, then design of any kind. And reference to Ben Affleck. Nah, he doesn't care because he reads, then regurgitates. Yep. So any tool of capitalism is a weapon upon the masses. So can't blame you. Damn, nah, not the insurance. It was already scammy. Yep. We were talking about today, were we not? I fucking hate talking to insurance. It sucks. So, but anyway, all right. Ready for your next one? We got to get through it.
Yeah.
It might be a bit.
Yeah. We'll try and get, well, it won't be fast, but we'll try and get through enough. Well, we'll try and get through it as, not quickly, but with it, at least be efficient with it as we can. And this will probably be, I would guess this will probably be a developing story as we get into the last couple of months of this administration during this transition. So if anything that we want to add after the fact, we will. But this is all the information that we have so far. And shout out to you, Lee, for helping me with this, as there was a lot of information that we had to kind of peruse through, but try and make it somewhat succinct.
Make sense of it all.
Right.
You know?
But I think this is good in terms of, you know, just we haven't spoken about Russia in a minute. So I think it's just a good way to kind of talk about where we are now, but kind of go into the history as to why we're here in the first place, and how I argue that this is Biden's, like, flipping of the bird, literally, in terms of saddling Biden with this war in Ukraine, when Republicans, and I don't want to say to their credit, but, you know, generally as a party, they've been against this war in Ukraine. And Biden's saying, no, I want you to continue dealing with it. Minnesota! So it'll be, either way, it'll be an interesting 2 months of how this will develop. But so we have several articles that we're going to Frankenstein into one, plus different tweets that we have from trusted sources of the network. But we're going to start with Consortium. This is going to be a huge chunk of this, and I might jump around a little bit, but stay with me. But the first two are going to be from Joe Luria. This first article, he writes, on way out, reckless Biden allows deep Russia strikes. With his party decisively beat at the polls, the rejected president is gambling with regional security to preserve his legacy and to saddle the incoming president, who wants to end the war, with a major new crisis, writes Joe. So Joe continues, as a parting shot to incoming U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, the defeated Joe Biden has defiled the Pentagon by risking European and U.S. security with his decision announced Sunday to allow Ukraine to fire U.S. long-range missiles into Russian territory. Just 2 months ago, in September, Biden had bowed to the realists in the Pentagon to oppose allowing long-range British Storm Shadow missiles from being fired by Ukraine deep into Russia out of fear it would lead to a direct NATO-Russia military confrontation, with all of that entails. Putin warned at the time in that British soldiers on the ground in Ukraine launching the British missiles into Russia with U.S. geostrategic support will mean that NATO countries, the United States and European countries, are at war with Russia. And if it is the case, then, bearing in mind the change in the essence of the conflict, we will make appropriate decisions in response to the threats that will be posed to us. That was a clear warning that British and U.S. targets could be hit. Biden thus wisely backed off. It was the second time that Biden had sided with the Pentagon against the neocons in his administration, when it came to avoiding direct war with Russia. The first time was in March 2022, when his neocon Secretary of State Anthony Blinken stepped out of line to announce that the U.S. would give NATO member Poland a green light to send MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine to enforce a no-fly zone against Russian aircraft. Members of Congress and the media then piled the pressure on Biden to approve it until cooler heads at the U.S. Defense Department, the greatest purveyor of violence in history, stepped in to stop it. Biden ultimately sided with the Pentagon, and he couldn't be more explicit why. He opposed a NATO no-fly zone over Ukraine fighting Russian aircraft. He said, because that's called World War III, okay? Let's get it straight here, guys. We will not fight the Third World War in Ukraine. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin at the time backed him up, saying, President Biden has been clear that U.S. troops won't fight Russia in Ukraine, and if you establish a no-fly zone, certainly in order to enforce that no-fly zone, you'll have to engage Russian aircraft. And again, that will put us at war with Russia. But now Biden has reversed himself on his sensible positions and is defying the Pentagon to roll the dice that Russian warnings, repeated on Monday by Putin's spokesman, won't lead to nuclear conflict. While I previously wouldn't even authorize British long-range missile attacks into Russia in September, let alone U.S. ATACMS, on Sunday he authorized the ATACMS, risking Russia taking direct action against U.S. targets. So what changed Biden's addled mind? You have something you wanted to say?
No, I was just Atticums. It's also, let's be first and foremost, none of this is Biden. You know?
No.
This is the deep state in control.
No,
so...
this is Raytheon. This is Boeing.
Yeah.
This is the military complex talking. For sure. So, but the idea that they're giving him credit for actually like stepping back, I'm kind of like, okay. But you know, what do you want for that? Cookie for that? But I would think you would
ice cream.
I would, but I would argue you wouldn't necessarily want that, but he definitely was not opposed to the idea either. I would argue.
I mean, this is very similar to how Obama tried to like put troops against the Russian border when Trump came in last time. You know, so it's also this thing about. I honestly think Trump does this thing sometimes where it's like when people call him something, he tries so hard to be the opposite of that. Right? Where it's like, they're like, well, you're pro-Russian. It's like, okay, well, watch this, you know?
Right.
Like that's, and they're just setting it up for him to be like, well, he's going to have to choose. Either he's going to have to pull all this stuff back, right? Which then will claim he's pro-Russian, or he's got to increase all this and like we'll still call him pro-Russian somehow. So we'll see. But anyway, you were saying?
Oh, so what changed with Biden? First, the undemocratic U.S. electoral system gave Biden the opportunity. His party was voted out of office on November 5th, but through the demos rejected Democrats in the White House, they get to hang on in power for another 11 weeks, enough time to do considerable mischief to tie up the incoming administration that the people chose. In the parliamentary system, the new prime minister takes office on the next day, and names of the new cabinet well in advance of the election. After one-term President George H.W. Bush lost to Bill Clinton in the 1992 election, Bush used those 11 weeks to invade Somalia, saddling Clinton with a foreign policy crisis that will bog him down and distract him from his agenda. What is happening now is something similar. Biden wants to undermine Trump's effort to end the Ukraine war. The incoming vice president has floated the idea of Russia holding onto territory it has won in exchange for peace. Biden states his legacy on Ukraine. I would argue his money, but legacy, sure.
A lot of people.
He was involved in the 2014 coup, in allegedly shady practices there with his son, and then in provoking Russia to invade in 2022. He foolishly believed he would prevail in bringing down Putin with an economic, information, and proxy ground war. See, Biden confirms why the U.S. needed this war. So I'm actually going to read that, or at least part of that article.
Okay.
Because I think that hasn't necessarily been mentioned in mainstream media. I hadn't heard anything regarding to that, so we are going to read a part of that article regarding that in a second. All three are now decisively lost as the U.S., still under Biden, prepares for the endgame. Biden's only safe face saver is for Ukraine to get back some of its lost territory by trading for it with Russian territory it seized in Kursk this summer. So we are actually going to go to that second article that was embedded. And this was written back in March of 2022, also by Joe. Biden confirms why the U.S. needed this war. In a moment of candor, Joe Biden has revealed why the U.S. needed the Russian invasion and why it needed to continue. The U.S. got its war with Ukraine. Without it, Washington could not attempt to destroy Russia's economy, orchestrating worldwide condemnation and leading an insurgency to bleed Russia, all part of an attempt to bring down its government. Joe Biden has now left no doubt that it's true. The President of the United States has confirmed what Consortium News and others have been reporting since the beginning of Russiagate in 2016, that the ultimate U.S. aim is to overthrow the government of Vladimir Putin. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power, Biden said on Saturday at the Royal Castle in Warsaw. The White House and the State Department have been scrambling to explain away Biden's remark, but it is too late. The president's point was that Putin cannot be allowed to exercise power over his neighbors or the region, a White House official said. He was not discussing Putin's power in Russia or regime change. Nice try. On Sunday, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said, as you know, and as you may have heard us say repeatedly, we do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia or anywhere else for that. Oh, God. The lies, man.
I know, dude.
The last words inserted for comic relief.
Mm-hmm.
Biden first gave the game away at his February 24th White House press conference, the first day of the invasion. He was asked why he thought new sanctions would work when the earliest sanctions had not prevented Russia's invasion. Biden said the sanctions were never designed to prevent Russia's intervention, but to punish it afterward.
Look at the gaslight.
Therefore, the U.S. needed Russia to invade in order to punish it in the hope of undermining its economy and Putin's rule, which we're seeing didn't happen. If anything,
it has backfired enormously.
Right.
Like,
no one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening, Biden said. This has to, this is, I wish I could say it in
his voice.
In his voice, but
it's gonna take
this
time.
is going to take time. And we have to show, why are you reading? You have a better voice.
This is gonna take time, Fred, and we have to show resolve so he knows what's coming, and so the people of Russia know what he's brought on who what happened. Where's my tapioca?
It is all about the Russian people turning on Putin to overthrow him, which would explain Russia's crackdown on anti-war protesters and the media.
Okay.
It was no slip of the tongue. Biden repeated himself in Brussels on Thursday. Let's get something straight. I did not say that, in fact, the sanctions would deter him. Sanctions never deter. You keep talking about that. Sanctions never deter. The maintenance of sanctions, the increasing the pain, we will sustain what we're doing not just next month, the following month, but for the remainder of this entire year. That's what will stop him. Just
Biden didn't say that shit. That's the translation from some fucking other news agency that put together some of the coherent words he threw out. Like,
it was the second time that Biden confirmed that the purpose of the draconian U.S. sanctions on Russia was never to prevent the invasion of Ukraine, which the US desperately needed to activate its plans, but to punish Russia and get its people to rise up against Putin and ultimately restore a Yeltsin-like puppet to Moscow. Without a cause, those sanctions could never have been imposed. The cause was Russia's invasion.
Except that hadn't happened.
Right.
Until you, okay.
Right. So now back to the first article. So I just wanted to read that little excerpt as to, Biden gave the game away a couple of years ago now, in terms of what he wanted out of this assault. But now, in the present day, all three are now decisively lost as the U.S. still under. Oh, I read that part. So he's authorizing U.S. soldiers to operate atomic missiles from Ukraine to beat back a 50,000-man Russia force seeking to take back all of that Russian territory. Part of that force, according to the Pentagon spokesperson, is a contingent of at least 10,000 North Korean troops invited to Moscow, thus operating legally on pre-war Russian territory.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Allegedly. Yet the presence of these North Koreans has sent the Biden administration and its allied media into paradoxicisms of near insanity. The New York Times reported on Sunday, officials said Mr. Biden was persuaded to make the change in part by the sheer audacity of Russia's decision to throw North Korean troops at Ukrainian lines. He was also swayed, they said, by concerns that the Russian assault force would be able to overturn Ukrainian troops in Kursk if they were not allowed to defend themselves with long-range weapons. Scroll down. It's not like Biden doesn't know the potentially grave consequences he is recklessly unleashing. He was already warned about the no-fly zone and said, that's called World War III, okay? He was then warned by the Pentagon against allowing the British missiles and acted like a responsible statesman. But now, when it comes to his previous legacy, he doesn't appear to give a damn about anything else. He was deprived of a second term by traitors within his own party he no doubt thinks, cough, Nancy Pelosi, cough, among others. And he will risk a NATO-Russia war to avoid the taint of utter defeat in Ukraine. So basically, his ego will be hurt if he does not follow through.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I think there's some slight differences with how this actually turns out, which we'll get into, I'm sure.
And in a minute, yeah. This is what he's ignoring, according to the Times. Some of Mr. Biden's advisors have seized on a recent U.S. intelligence assessment that warned that Mr. Putin could respond to the use of long-range atomics on Russia's soil by directing the Russian military or its spy agencies to retaliate, potentially with lethal force, against the United States and its European allies.
Yep.
The assessment warned of several possible Russian responses that included stepping up acts of arson and sabotage targeting facilities in Europe, as well as potentially lethal attacks on U.S. and European military bases. Where it goes from there, nobody knows. Thanks, Joe.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Basically. That's kind of what I read into that. It's like, we have nuclear arms and we're not afraid to use them. So any thoughts on this before we continue?
No, I think we'll get into where my stuff differs. But I mean, I think from what I've heard so far is that this long-range missile capability that he's thrown out there, which is mainly like political saber rattling, right? Is like actually not what people think it is, because you still need satellite data to use them actually long range, like to strike within Russia, right? And we're not giving them that so far.
Right.
So I think it's like essentially just within the Kursk region, which, as we've talked about before, they're trying to hold on to before peace talks because it includes some like critical infrastructure, right? So they really don't want Russia to take back that region. But I think Russia has other plans. So
right.
I don't think this deters them at all.
No. So shout out to Fiorella, who has done quite a bit of reporting on this, and she's done a lot more on this within the last few days, but we're going to read some of what she reported on. So she says, breaking, Lavrov states the U.S. wants an escalation after Ukraine launched 6 U.S. atoms at Russia's Bryansk region after Biden reportedly lifted restrictions on the use of missiles, and Putin's updated Russian nuclear doctrine to state that the attack on Russia by a non-nuclear power backed by a nuclear state will be considered a joint attack by both. It's been clear that the U.S. military intel apparatus is determined to escalate toward war, and by this I mean the apparatus beyond party or president. Now, Russia will make a move depending on how they read the situation, which could very well be an entrapment. So, so she inserted a link regarding all of this. So let's look at the clip.
You're asking me questions about whether what New York Times published is truth or an attempt just to speculate on this information about the attacks against the Bryansk region where these missiles were used. It's a signal saying that they want an escalation, and using these highly technological missiles without Americans. President Putin spoke about this many times. It would be impossible to use them without Americans, and he warned how our position changed if these long-range missiles, 300-kilometer range missiles, will be authorized to use against our country. They now say that we are going to strike you as far as 300 kilometers deep. And everyone is saying that the authorization is there. Even Borrell said that it's official, and Europeans, they had this discussion, and then they decided that each of them will make their own decision in this regards, whether they authorize to use their long-range weapons for Ukrainians. I'm not going to speculate on this topic. We have our nuclear doctrine that was officially published, and it says now officially, now it's a law, that all the things that President spoke about a month or slightly more, and I hope that they are going to read this doctrine, not how they read the UN Charter, seeing only things that they need, but they will read the entire doctrine in all its interconnectedness. And whether if someone asked me about it, so someone asked me on the sidelines whether it's true or not. I said, I don't know. We care about our own security, first of all, and all the things that we need to know. We told those who are floating these ideas, we told all we had to say, and now it's officially enshrined in the official doctrine.
Okay. I mean, essentially, that was like, there might be consequences.
Right.
So,
I wouldn't say might be, I'd say probably.
Yeah.
Or more definitely likely. You know, because I think I would argue that Russia has been somewhat holding back on this. So, but Fee continues, let me clarify a few things here. The French publication Le Figaro has removed information that France and Britain, following the US, have allowed Ukraine to launch strikes with its own Storm Shadow Scalp EG missiles deep into Russian territory. So that's no longer a thing, at least at face of all of this. The Times also cited that the US may not yet have given consent to Ukraine's use of Storm Shadow missiles which, yes, come from the UK, but use US technology, which requires the UK to obtain additional permissions from Washington. Schultz has refused to supply Taurus missiles to Kiev, actually. Kiev, whatever. Can you scroll down?
Yep.
Only information about Biden's permission to launch Artemis has been reliably confirmed, with Axios emphasizing it only concerns the Kursk region. Russia, for its part, remains firmly committed to the position of preventing nuclear war. Washington itself hasn't confirmed the decision regarding strikes into Russian territory, only in the media. With Lavrov, Putin, Pryor, and other government officials, Russia has already said they will respond accordingly to U.S. decisions on strikes on deep Russian territory. So,
this is walking it back, and
right,
the media tried to saber rattle for us, but actually, we ain't doing shit. Don't worry about it.
Right.
So, okay.
So let's. Thank you. So let's follow up a little bit more. We got a little bit more. So this is from Kit Kronberg, and actually I switched the tweets here just to make it a little bit more succinct.
Yes.
So he tweeted, "Must read: mass backtracking on Ukraine's long-range strike ability has commenced spectacularly. Surprised by how many people who should have known better thought this was hugely significant and concrete all-out war escalation. It's simply not going to happen." So he retweeted from this tweet at, if you zoom in, please, at Simpatico771. "The expected walkbacks have already begun. The French publication Le Figaro has removed information." We already did that. So basically just kind of confirming what Fee said in the previous tweet. So, actually I'll move forward to save time. Nope. Is that it? Yeah.
No, that would go back one. This is Kronberg's. It's somehow forgotten that months ago, Western countries stated openly encouraging Ukraine to strike Russia with their weapons. One assembled gathering of diplomats with Russian officials in Moscow later, and the plans were dropped. Of course, active measures covering that. People also seem to have forgotten this incredible episode from October 2023. Telegraph reported UK would formally deploy to Ukraine. Medvedev said this would make the UK belligerent and open to attack, and the story was walked back significantly. So, again, this has happened a couple of times. So, yeah. Anyway.
But, so, breaking news, somewhat. Biden allows Ukraine to strike Russia with long-range U.S. missiles. This is written by Dave DeCamp. I didn't post him here, but written by Dave. He reports, New York Times reported on Sunday that President Biden had authorized Ukraine's use of long-range U.S.-provided missiles and strikes on Russian territory in an escalation Moscow has made clear risks nuclear war. U.S. officials told the paper that Ukraine can now use armed tactical missile systems, which have a range of up to 190 miles to strike Russian territory. The Artemis are fired by U.S.-made multiple rocket launch systems, including the HIMARS. Ukraine can only fire the HIMARS with coordinates provided by or confirmed by the U.S. and its allies, meaning the U.S. will now directly support strikes deep inside Russia. The U.S. officials said that the Artemis would likely initially be used to hit Russian troops fighting against Ukrainian forces in Russia's Kursk Oblast. Ukraine and the U.S. have also said Ukrainian troops are deployed in Kursk. The U.S. has said that the North Korean troops said that the North Korean troops are engaged in combat, but that hasn't been confirmed by Moscow. Earlier this year, President Biden gave Ukraine the green light to strike Russian border regions with U.S.-provided weapons, including shorter-range rockets fired by HIMARS. A few months later, Ukraine launched its invasion on Kursk, and Ukrainian officials began pushing hard for the U.S. to support longer-range strikes inside Russia. In response to those calls and comments from Western officials supporting the idea, Russian President Vladimir Putin said if NATO supported long-range strikes within Russia, it will put the Western military alliance at war with Russia.
Yeah.
Putin then ordered charges to Russia's nuclear doctrine that lowered the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons. Under the new doctrine, an attack on Russia by a non-nuclear armed state that was supported by nuclear power will be considered a joint
A
attack.
joint attack. Yeah, that's a big change.
Right. So the Kremlin said the changes to the nuclear doctrine were meant as a message to the West. This is a message that warns these countries of the consequences should they participate in an attack on our country by various means, not necessarily nuclear, said Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. I mean, you should have just said including.
Yeah.
You know,
fuck around, find out, dog.
Right. And they did, and we did. So the U.S. appeared to back down on supporting long-range strikes in Russia, but now the Biden administration is looking to escalate the proxy war as much as possible for its last few months in power. President-elect Donald Trump campaigned on ending the proxy war, and the Biden team and officials in Ukraine feel he will do just that. However, some of Trump's cabinet picks favor escalation in Ukraine, including his national security advisor, Mike Waltz. So, I'm
sure it'll be fine. I'm sure. You know, I'm sure Trump will keep everything. Nothing will fundamentally change.
Right. In a recent interview with NPR, Waltz was asked how Trump could end the war, and he suggested an escalation of sanctions and supporting long-range strikes in Russia.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
First and foremost, you would enforce the actual energy sanctions on Russia. Russia is essentially a gas station with nukes. Putin is selling more oil and gas now than he did pre-war through China and Russia. And you couple that with unleashing our energy, lifting a LNG ban, and his economy and his war machine will dry very quickly. So I think that will get Putin to the table. We have leverage, like taking the handcuffs off of the long-range weapons we provide Ukraine as well. And then, of course, I think we have plenty of leverage with Zelensky to get them to the table.
Hey, newsflash, dog. They were already at the table beforehand.
Right.
Go look up our, U.S. blocks peace segment or whatever I titled that, with hippie Putin up there. But, we've covered they were already going to. Y'all stopped them from doing that. Boris Johnson walked right on over there and said, hey. We're making money off your blood. We're doing that. Just relax. Tell me how, Collin, the sanctions have actually hurt Russia in a way.
No.
They ain't done shit,
if
right?
Anything is
they're making money off of it.
Right.
Europe is sipping Russian gas through India, acting like they're not. The sanctions have done nothing.
So Indy should check Waltz's stock portfolio. So
yeah, we know where the money lies.
Right. Follow the money. I'm sure he has some deals with the military industrial complex that interest him, that he will want to keep this going. Like many Democrat leaders in office. But here's our last article.
Anti-war member, Kyle Anzalone.
We've had him on the network before. We need to have him on again.
Yep.
So this will be the last part, at least for now. But as I said, we'll probably be talking more about this in the upcoming weeks. Maybe we'll talk about this over Israel for a bit, but we'll see. But he writes, Putin tells German leader that Ukraine peace deal possible. So So I'm sorry, like it's looking like Putin is actually the reasonable one in the room right now. So, oh wait, so let's see what he means by that. Russian President Vladimir Putin held a phone call with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and offered to end the war in Ukraine. The Russian leader offered a deal similar to the one proposed by Moscow in June. On Friday, Scholz spoke with Putin for the first time in nearly 2 years. According to the Kremlin, the Russian president noted that the Russian side has never refused and remains open to the resumption of the negotiations that were interrupted by the Kyiv regime, adding, Russia's proposals are well known and outlined, in particular, in a June speech at the Russian Foreign Ministry. In that speech, Putin said that if Ukrainian forces withdrew from all Russian annexed territory, adopted a position of neutrality between NATO and Russia, agreed to denazification and demilitarization of the country, and the lifting of all Western sanctions on Moscow, then Russia will bring a war to an end. Scholz's spokesperson said that the German and Russian leaders agreed to remain in contact. The official added that Scholz condemned the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine and called on President Putin to end it and withdraw his troops. He also told Putin Berlin maintains steadfast determination to support Ukraine for as long as possible. Ugh. This basically sounds like Israel. They have a right to the. That's what it sounds like to me. So, yeah. Throughout the Joe Biden administration, the West has refused to talk with Moscow about core national security issues. The refusal to negotiate through 2021 led Putin to invade Ukraine in the beginning of 2022. After the initial Russian invasion of Ukraine, a deal was nearly reached, but Kyiv has been pushed away from negotiations by its Western backers.
I said this.
After over 2.5 years of war and Ukraine not doing shit, Kyiv is struggling to find the manpower to continue the fight while losing territory to the Russian military. Though NATO countries pledged to give Ukraine everything it needed to win the war, Washington has refused to provide Ukraine with advanced weapons and long-range missiles Kyiv says it needed to achieve a victory until now.
Make them yourself.
Right.
Figure it the fuck out. Do your own work. You know? God. Trying to use our fucking weapons of death. That's our weapons of death. But yeah, I brought this. It's from Hotspot. Russia has begun mass production of mobile bomb shelters capable of withstanding nuclear shockwaves, radiation, and conventional attack. So they're trying to be prepared. Now, arguably, news is still out whether this is like new mass production or if they've already been doing that, right? I think this footage is like from a year ago, right? At least some of it.
Okay.
So keep that in mind, but production may have increased recently. Hard to tell. But I'll let people see the magical bean footage. Settings, playback speed, and action.
These bomb shelters are designed to protect against radiation and natural disasters, and they're now being mass-produced in Russia, the country's Emergency Ministry Research Institute has said. The announcement, coming as US President Joe Biden's administration agreed to allow Ukraine to fire American long-range missiles deep into Russia, though the Research Institute did not link the production increase to any current crisis. The Cub-M shelter is said to defend against a variety of threats, including shrapnel, debris, and fires. It can even be deployed in Russia's vast northern permafrost, according to the State Institute. A standard unit can hold 54 people, but additional modules can be added. The war in Ukraine is entering what some officials say could be its final, most dangerous phase. Moscow's forces are advancing at their fastest pace since the early weeks of the conflict in 2022, while the West is seeking to shore up Ukraine. On Tuesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin issued a warning to the US, lowering the threshold for a nuclear strike. On Monday, the Kremlin called Washington's long-range missile decision reckless and said it would respond.
So they're looking prepared. You know, or trying to, at least.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be in that shelter myself personally.
Right.
I mean, it seems like a cargo container at best. You know? I don't know. What is all this like jutty out bits? What is that for? That I don't get. I mean, I guess
think it's just extra support.
General protection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just looks weird. You know, it's probably deflecting stuff up, hopefully. But anyway, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. And like I said, this will probably be a developing story. So if we get more information, which I'm sure we probably will, we will as soon as we can. But just to let you know that this is the last fuck shit that Biden is trying to do as he rolls out of the White House. And so again, the question is, who's the greater evil here? Like, I would argue, really, if Biden really cared, he will try and do whatever he can now to actually give something to the people before he goes. But instead, he's potentially putting us in World War III. So what does that say about him and his character? He doesn't give a shit. So he's just part of the rot that is part of our government right now. And regardless, he's on his way out in terms of death. So he don't care. So I would argue he's probably close to death right now. So he won't have to deal with the long-term effects of his decisions, at least for not too long. You know, but we will have to if this continues. So it'll be interesting to see what Trump will do. Like, again, like there's no telling that he will end the war, especially if he
if he can make money off of it, great.
Right. Yeah. Like he's not gonna care either. But as we said, Biden is currently in office and he has another couple of months to do whatever he wants. During his lame duck, you know, just to fuck everybody over while he's. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yep. We'll see.
And
you got it? Oh, it's all backwards. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Probably talking about the story, among others, is while we're demonetized. So if you would like to support the channel, please feel free to scan the QR code on your smartphone, or you can go to the link that you see at the bottom of your screen, or if you're in the chat, you can type in ! donate, and the link will pop up, and you can click on the link there and donate right from the chat if you're on YouTube. And as we say, the algorithm hates us, so they suppress our content. The only way that we're able to get any sort of recognition on the platform is from viewers like you. So please don't forget to like and subscribe, and please share our content to help fight this suppression. And make sure to leave a comment. We do read them. We sometimes take suggestions and stories from you guys. So please check in and respond and like and all the things. And help us get to 3K. Hopefully, we'll be able to hit that in the first half of next year. And thanks for watching.
Yeah. Cool. Before we get to that, let's go to chats. I think it was KYE says, slaves of Mammon, demon lord of greed, the mire blood you feed him, the more gold he'll shit out for ye. Yep. Old demonology reference. Have you ever read any of that? Did that come up in your studies? Demonology stuff? You know, how there's like, I forget, there's like Mammon, and there's a couple of others. There's like, you know, blood for the blood god, all that stuff. Very Lovecraftian kind of stuff.
Sean in the chat says, hope my accounting comes out positive, hoping to give a cool bonus to INN. Oh, thank you. We appreciate that. But again, make sure you take care of yourself. If you have family and friends or community members that you need to take care of, they're more deserving of us. But thank you for thinking of us still in terms of your bonus. So we do appreciate the gesture. But hope you're able to do something nice with that bonus for yourself, hopefully.
Indy saying they closed American businesses from doing business in Russia and shut down RT and Sputnik in the West. Yeah, but all those people are still around doing stuff, getting money, Like, I bet those American businesses have found loopholes, Like, if I know American businesses, it's that they don't like to lose money when they don't have to. So, the money finds a way. I'm sure if anything, does that not hurt our pocketbooks more than it hurts Russia? Because Russia is still selling to everywhere else, So, and it's like, I don't think Levi's have made in Russia on, so I don't think that was a problem, But anyway, what is Merman and Mammon, Indy said. I don't know about Merman. Mammon, I know.
Mammon is greed, right?
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do believe. I don't know about the other ones, but there was a game that had all those in it that was very good. Anyway, ready for our next one? Ready?
Yes.
Cool. So we talked about nightmare fuel frequently on the show. Last week we talked about facial recognition stuff that Israel's using against Palestinians. So I figured we should look more into something I touched on in that segment. And luckily, Declassified UK has us covered. So Mark Curtis writes, British troops using Israeli arms technology tested in Gaza. Who would have thought, Collin, that it's just essentially a testing ground for murder.
Right.
So they're talking about this cutting edge weapon site, which we'll get into. I think it sounds benign at the front, but I think its implications are a little more scurry. But the British Army's main global response force is now equipped with new EF technology being used in Gaza. The Air Assault Brigade, based in Gloucestershire, you would know that more than I would, right? Gloucestershire,
yeah.
Worcestershire, Gloucestershire, whatever.
All right.
Y'all need to figure English out, England. Just telling you. So has been training with high-tech weapon sites manufactured by Israeli arms firm Smart Shooter. The brigade is held at high readiness to respond to crises, including warfighting anywhere in the world, the Army says. Last month, soldiers in the brigade shot down enemy drones in an exercise on Salisbury Plain using newly acquired weapon sights from the Israeli firm. So the sophisticated scopes are attached to assault rifles and other guns and give soldiers a high probability of a hit. They can recognize a target, track its movements, and maintain a lock on the target even if it or the user moves. It's behind cover, depending on things. So the Army says it intends to use the equipment against drones, but the specialist sites can be used against land-based targets. Well, soldiers in the IDF are using thousands of smart shooter sites in the fighting on various fronts. Israeli media site Globes has reported. The company, which is managed by Israeli arms industry veterans, produces a range of precision targeting equipment that has been developed under the direction and funding of the Israeli Defense Ministry's Directorate of Defense Research and Development. So, Collin, let's take a look at Smart Shooter, right? This is their website. It's not a standard rifle optic. It's an automatic targeting and firing system for small arms. Okay? So, what do you think that means? So you can mount it to anything. You can put it on your 50 caliber Barrett if you want to, right? Selects your target. Through advanced image processing, Smash recognizes the target and can predict its movements. It tracks that. Smash will stay locked on the target even when you or the target move, right? And then once locked, pull the trigger and Smash will do the rest, making sure you hit the target. Okay? So it's essentially aimbot for real guns.
Yeah.
Essentially doesn't let you pull the trigger unless you're actually accurate. Right? So things like this, the Smash X4, little 4x magnified optic, right? Includes all their, lovely AI capable stuff in it, right? But here's how it's used. We've seen stuff kind of similar recently, right?
Yes.
But I don't think people, until they see it, I don't think they really understand. Like this isn't like, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of hitting targets, like, of course, laser range finding, standard stuff, really, we already do that, but it's, mainly it's the feature of like wind conditions and locking on target, all that stuff. All the tracking, target detection, things like that, right? Is a factor for that. But more importantly, less on normal rifles, right? I think it's less a problem, right? But it's stuff like this, right? Which we covered this a bit, right? Weapon mounted systems. That does very similar things. Right. But, it can all be done remotely, safely, all that jazz. There you go. Doesn't it look nice and very capable to be planted on top of a robot dog? Very capable of doing that. So my thing for these are pretty easily concealable, Like, it's a lot easier to hide a gun than it is to hide a person. You know what I mean? Like, that to me is the factor. And try to think about this much more like police will have this technology, like it will become used here, There might even be civilian versions of all this, which is even more terrifying to me, right? But again, vehicle mounted, all that stuff. I don't know exactly how capable it is as far as larger caliber weapons, right? Could I throw an M60 on there and it do the same? I don't know, right? But we've seen this. They're pulling up a little tablet, pointing out targets, pressing the button. They're video gaming death for the most part. But it doesn't just stop there, Collin. Let me introduce you to Smash Dragon, right? So that's a drone with a gun, pretty much. It's a drone with facial tracking, and I don't know why they put the gun upside down, but they felt that was important, But yeah, just slightly terrifying, like future war nonsense. This is without the need for probably anyone to man this. So, like, this can't be done autonomously. Attach Lavender AI to this and it go around shooting whoever it wants. But you have any thoughts so far, other than just terror?
No. I think you have I think this is your kink, honestly.
I just see wider like implications, right?
Yes.
You know, this isn't going to stop at Gaza, you know?
Right.
Like, now we've heard in places like Gaza, you can't record audio without hearing thousands of drones, right? Like, we've heard those things, right? You know, throw a rocket launcher on there and it's fine. We've talked about just a little bit of plastic explosives on a tiny drone could do a lot of damage. So I think people don't understand what warfare is anymore, right? And this is across the board. This is Russia, China, here. Every one of them have this technology and are using it to the utmost. Right now in Ukraine and Russia, both sides are using kamikaze drones everywhere, right? Because it's cheap to produce, right? And massively effective. You know, like it cost me $200 to make a drone, put some plastic explosives on it, and it does the work of a warthog, you know? Like,
right.
I think that's the thing you're seeing with this is like the economy of warfare is changing. Plus, I guarantee you this can hit you from like way before you ever see it or hear it. That's also the factors I have. It can track you. It can track you behind walls. Like, good luck. You know? So, but anyway, I think there's a little more to this article. So smart shooters weapon sights first came in use by the Israeli military in 2018. The IDF's use of smart shooters equipment has since expanded, with Israeli special forces and commandos teams such as the Maglan unit and Golani Brigade deploying variants of the company's weapon sights technology in Gaza. The system that turns every soldier into a sniper is how IDF ministry has described the introduction of smart shooters equipment. Honored to support the IDF and global forces, Smart Shooter has tweeted in response. So, if in a post earlier this year, the company noted that its equipment was one of the most useful new items being demonstrated on the battlefield. Journalist Antti Lowenstein has shown how Israel has routinely deployed new types of military equipment against Palestinians and then marketed and sold those around the world. That's the kicker for me, right? This will be sold to our police forces, to special forces around the world, right? There is wider implications to this technology. He told Declassified, Smart Shooter is just one of many Israeli companies testing equipment on occupied Palestinians. It's a highly profitable business, and the slaughter in Gaza isn't slowing down the trade. If anything, it's increasing due to many nations attracted to the Israeli model of subjugation and control. Other military items tested by Israel for the first time in the battlefield in Gaza include the 7.62 Negev machine gun, Holit and Yadid shouldered fire rockets, the Iron Sting mortar shell, and a 5th-generation Merkava tank. Amid the war in Gaza, Smart Shooters equipment was shown off at an arms exhibition in September, sponsored by Britain's Ministry of Defense. Viking Arms, a Yorkshire-based company that distributes Smart Shooters equipment in Britain, presented the products at an arms fair known as DVD 2024, which took place in Bedfordshire. Viking Arms said the event will emphasize learning from current conflicts and would involve discussions with Army headquarters personnel. In June 2023, Britain's MOD purchased an initial 225 Smart Shooter gun sights in a contract with Viking Arms worth £4.6 million. Care Bear. How much is that in regular dollary dues? Like 8 million? Around, like give or take. The contract is part of a 5-year framework agreement worth up to £20 million to deliver more equipment to dismounted close combat soldiers. The British Army stated to receive the weapon sights in early 2024. It says the Smart Shooters equipment will provide soldiers with a cutting-edge weapon sight that will give them a tactical advantage countering drones. They will be available to very high readiness units across the British Army, as well as to forces in the Navy and Royal Air Force. The sites were first tested by the Army's Experimentation Battalion, 2 Yorks, in 2022. Smart Shooter's weapon sites are also deployed by U.S. Special Forces and several other NATO armies. Last month, Declassified revealed a secret UK military project with Israel, codenamed Hezuk, which sought to strengthen intelligence collaboration and military cooperation. Details of the plans concern defense capability, including a number of MOD programs with potential Israeli solutions, such as countering small drones. So, any questions?
I do not.
Okay. Any thoughts? Closing statements? You know.
We're fine.
Yeah, yes, we are. Yes, we are. Well, talking about these things is why we're demonetized. You can scan that QR code on your screen or go to code-fee.com/indienewsnetwork. Help us out with the dollary dues there. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please share. You know, we're heavily suppressed, so any little bit helps. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. You know, what terrifying things keep you up at night. Otherwise, thanks for watching. All right. Before we get to the last one, anything in the chats?
Let's see.
Bad cookies. That thing is so light you can mount it on an attack robo dog. Yep. So yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I find that terrifying, you know. So, but people are talking about INN8, the Ocho, as our alternative YouTube. Might be an option.
So Bad Cookie said, he asked me a question. Speaking of off topic, do my students call me Mr. Carter or Mr. Obona? Mr. Carter is my dad. Let's get that clear. So no, they actually call me Mr. RC.
Okay.
R and C, because that's my
That makes sense.
last name. So it's the initials of my last name. So
Like the cola.
Yeah. So that's what
Classically.
that's what my students call me at school.
Well, people quoting Misty, we're fucked. I agree. Well, last story for this evening. Obsolete fleet, right? I've talked about it a ton, how our military are paper tigers. You know, it's essentially money laundering towards our military industrial complex, and maybe it might not be the most efficient thing, right? So, Declassified UK again, Richard Norton Taylor, right? The giant warship sinking Britain's budget. If Chancellor Rachel Reeves is serious about public finances, she must stop the Royal Navy's aircraft carriers causing a black hole in the military budget. You ever been on an aircraft carrier, Collin? You ever seen? Okay, been on one. Like it was mothballed, but nonetheless, they're massive. They are massive things. They are small cities on the water. That is what they are, right?
Yes.
So, as Labour presents the public with large tax rises and cuts in services, Britain's armed forces are wasting billions of pounds of public money on projects with no practical use in present or potential future conflicts. It would be nothing short of a scandal if they are given more taxpayers' money to spend. Prime candidates for the chop and an immediate target for the government's proposed Office for the Value of Money should be the 2 aircraft carriers, the Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales, the largest ships ever built for the Royal Navy. Independent analysts are starting to question the future of the carriers, something that was unthinkable not so long ago. There is speculation that at least one could be mothballed. Shortly after he retired as chief of the defense staff, General, now Lord, David Richards describes the ships as unaffordable, vulnerable metal cans. They were behemoths, he told me. Accurate. Vulnerable metal can behemoth is accurate. But we should not expect any brave proposals from the government's defense review. Its panel consists of Lord George Robertson, Tony Blair's defense secretary, and former NATO Secretary General Fiona Hill, former advisor to Donald Trump, described by the government as a foreign policy expert, and General Sir Richard Barrons, former deputy chief of the defense staff. None of them are likely to rock the boat. Sounds about par for the course, no?
Right.
One of Cameron's first proposals when he became prime minister in 2010 was to get rid of the carriers. He was told it would cost more to cancel the contract with the shipbuilders led by BAE Systems than to continue building them. So how the hell does that work? Rory Stewart, a former Conservative minister, wrote in his memoir that Cameron pushed ahead with buying 2 aircraft carriers we didn't need, had no carrier groups to escort, that's a big deal, and for which we could not afford any planes. So you kind of need those things for aircraft carriers to work. So
right.
That's how these things work. So Kit Clarenberg, friend of the show, 2.5 months after I declared the deaths of U.S. aircraft carriers after Washington's embarrassing drubbing by Ansar Allah in the Red Sea, and in turn Western hegemony, British Navy wargame exercises conclude the exact same thing. Right? So Kit had this article. This might be, I get it confused, which I dug a little deeper on a few of these. I think Kit's is the next one. But in all of the Pentagon's war games against China, so this was about the Millennium Challenge, right? Which we talked about not too long ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so this is the tweet that he's referenced. This is this one from the Times, right? The war games expose aircraft carriers. In all of the Pentagon's war games against China, we lose every time. The heavily tattooed Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump's pick for defense secretary, said on a podcast aired last week. The war veteran and television host, who will be responsible for the world's most powerful military in his first political role at the age of 44, questioned the vulnerability of America's aircraft carriers given China's development of hypersonic missiles, right? Again, that comes up frequently, right? Who else has those? Do you remember? Those hypersonics. No. Iran classically has those.
Oh, yeah.
As I imagine Russia also does at this point. So if our whole power projection platform is aircraft carriers and is I-5 hypersonic missiles can take out 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict, what does that look like? He said on the Sean Ryan Show, hosted by the former United States Navy SEAL and CIA contractor. Similar questions are being asked about the UK's two 6.2 billion aircraft carriers, HMS Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales, commissioned into the Royal Navy in 2017 and 2019, respectively. So $6.2 billion, Collin, is a lot of monies.
Yes.
Pounds. That's twice as much. That's like 10 billion or something, right? So Matthew Seville, director of military sciences at the Royal United Services Institute, said missile technology was developing at such a pace that it was become more feasible to locate and track aircraft carriers. A carrier strike group typically consists of 2 Type 45 destroyers for air defense, 2 Type 23 frigates for anti-submarine warfare, a submarine, a fleet tanker, and a support ship. One of the problems with Queen Elizabeth is if they do that full-fat protective approach, then you have just put most of the deployable Royal Navy around one target. you can protect the carriers, but then the Navy has to put all its eggs in a particularly large and expensive basket. This is the problem with carriers, right? Is that they need so much more protection than all the other boats need, right? Like, that's mainly part of it. I don't know if you've ever seen like a carrier flotilla from us, right? But it's like multiple patrol boats, multiple frigates, couple of destroyers, like fuel, right? I mean, we have like 2 or 3 of those going around the world at any given time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of money. So this is from Kit's article, right? He writes, an Al Mayadeen investigation of July 19th laid bare the U.S. Navy's crushing defeat by Yemen's Ansar Allah and Washington's initially vaunted Operation Prosperity Guardian. Western media has finally acknowledged the empire's comprehensive trouncing by God's partisans in an epic David v. Goliath triumph. Elsewhere, too, reporting on the much-hyped USS Eisenhower aircraft carrier strike groups returned to base after months of relentless bombardment by the resistance amply underlines how aircraft carriers, the core component of U.S. hegemony for decades, are quite literally dead in the water. The New York Times innocuously headlined USS Eisenhower's humiliating retreat as the end of a strategic deployment. While simultaneously hailing a heroic homecoming, the article records how, as the grand vessel neared Virginia's Norfolk Harbor, one of the world's largest U.S. naval installations, a plane carrying National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan touched down on its deck. He addressed thousands of returning sailors there, all eager to be home, and with the outlet dubbed an extraordinarily pumped all-hands call. A far more rational conclusion to draw from Operation Prosperity Guardian is that U.S. aircraft carriers have been proven behind any reasonable doubt to be a redundant relic of a bygone unipolar age. The empire's bloated, exorbitantly expensive military machine, built in recent decades, exclusively suited to one-sided gang beatings of adversaries that can't retaliate, is now unable to meet the challenges of modern warfare. By contrast, the resistance have effortlessly innovated and equipped themselves for 21st century battle. That, I think, is the problem. In our last segment, we covered like drone warfare, right? That's a lot easier and more efficient to produce with just as like capable like things. Like they can drop almost the same armaments, in some respects, depending on how massive your drone is. Usually a lot harder to detect on radar, that plus all the hypersonics and stuff. We've seen Iran pitch loads of like decoy drones and decoy missiles, right? And like then send the real missiles that cost money, So again, I talked about this a ton, that it's about money and how cheaply you can murder people now, right?
Yeah.
So the Empire has been comprehensively defeated by day 2 of the 2-week-long simulation, right? This is about the Millennial Project. So the Pentagon we talked about this like a couple weeks ago, right? Where this like big war games thing happened where we lost, right? But I wanted to look at like the actual rule changes, which we didn't like look at. So the Pentagon restarted the exercise and began changing the rules, right? So a control group steadily imposed constraints on Van Ripper, who was the like red team captain, right? Playing the part of like a Eastern, Middle Eastern force. First, his military was forced to use unencrypted cell phones, right, to coordinate and plan missions so Blue could closely monitor its communications, right? So we have to know it. We have to listen to your communications, right? What Red did then was simply opted to use motorcycle messengers and coded messages broadcast via local mosque minarets, right? So they just got around this system. They're like, all right, well, fuck you. You know, we'll do it this other way, right? This was just one troublesome, unorthodox tactic Van Ripper deployed to frustrate Blues incursion, which was blocked by the War Games Pentagon direct referees. Meanwhile, constraints and demands on Red's operations grew even wilder. Van Ripper was compelled to switch off his side's air defenses and move Red forces away from simulated beaches and other areas where Blues Marines and soldiers were scheduled to swoop in from aircraft carriers. So, don't defend the beaches, don't defend the air. Right? That's essentially what they told them. Don't do that and let us win. Essentially, Van Ripper quit in disgust. He's like, fuck you, I quit. Which is just amazing. I love that. So back to this original article, the Ministry of Defense then abandoned its original plan to construct carriers with catapults and arrestor gear, cats and traps on the grounds of cost. It chose instead the alternative and cheaper short takeoff and vertical landing jump jet version, right? Which then means you have to have a ton of Harriers to pay for. You got to pay for all the fancy jets that can vertical takeoff, right? The decision was taken even through the MOD admitted that the cats and trap system was much more efficient for launching aircraft with a longer range and greater payload, something it had earlier described as the critical requirement for precision strike operations in the future. So they're like, fuck it, we don't need that, I guess. We said it was important, but whatever. The MOD is now considering whether to provide the carriers with cats and traps after all, but to launch drones, thus providing the cheapest, most efficient weapons with a large, hugely expensive, and vulnerable floating base that you don't need. You could send drones off a dinghy, dude. You know? Like a little rubber boat you could put your drone up from. Anyway, the carriers were championed by Cameron's predecessor, Gordon Brown, a commitment perhaps more than any other that bellies his reputation as a prudent chancellor of the, what's that word, exchequer? Exchequer? That's some weird French nonsense. They were built in Royce, neighboring his Scottish constituency. When Brown's predecessor, Tony Blair, signed off on the carriers in 2006, they were estimated to cost $3.9 billion. So, the author wrote a number of articles reflecting the worries of the few government officials prepared on condition they were not identified to share their concerns that the ships would be an extravagance that the country could not afford and the armed forces didn't need. A former naval officer got in touch with me opposing the decision to build the carriers. Speaking privately, he described the decision as a combination of naval vanity and pork barrel politics. The Royal Navy, he added, was moving in a direction absolutely contrary to the strategic developments of our time. Yet serving admirals and MOD spokesperson persistently brushed aside any criticism of the decision to build the carriers. By 2008, their cost had risen to £6.2 billion. Ever since they put out to sea, both the Queen Elizabeth, the Navy's flagship, and the Prince of Wales have been plagued with serious and hugely embarrassing mechanical problems. They have forced them into dry dock for extensive repairs and prevented the participation in NATO exercises designed to demonstrate the reach of Britain's sea power. The Prince of Wales broke down in August 2022, a day after setting sail for the US, as a result of a broken prop shaft, which was misaligned when it was first installed. Bro, that's a big prop shaft to misalign, first of all. Like, I don't know if you've seen the props on an aircraft carrier, but a pretty good size. You know? Like, dude, that's like misaligning a rod that's like fucking this big, dude. How do you do that? You know? That's not just like an oopsie poopsie. You know? Like, that's a fuck up there. Like, that whole rod had to be fucked. The ship commission in 2019 had already been flooded twice in its first year of service. It was taken to Royce for repairs, which took 9 months. Another problem with a prop shaft was identified early in 2023 when the declined to tell MPs the cost of the repairs. Similarly, in 2017, a leak flooded the Queen Elizabeth. This year, the carrier had to pull out of a major NATO exercise, steadfast defender of Norway, after a problem on one of its propeller shafts was discovered. Hey, sounds like there's a pattern. The Prince of Wales was about to replace it before a new mechanical fault was found on it too. Which was described as a planned overhaul was postponed and temporary repairs were hurriedly fixed to allow it to replace the Queen Elizabeth. The MOD had repeatedly declined to say who would be responsible for paying for the repairs. By 2012, the cost of repairing the carriers already amounted to at least £39 million. Maintaining and repairing serious faults in the new ships has now cost nearly £1 billion, according to a Freedom of Information request. Surprised they're even letting you have access to that information. But in closing, the carriers are imposing a significant financial cost at an already pressed military budget and divert other ships from much more important roles. In any potential hostile environment, the carriers would need protection from a fleet of escorts, including anti-submarine frigates and nuclear-powered submarines, armed with conventional sea-to-air missiles, an oil tanker, and a supply vessel. All these are ships which the Royal Navy is desperately short of. The carriers would also be vulnerable to armed drones, including underwater drones that proved so successful in Ukraine's attack on Russia's Black Sea fleet. They have such large radar signatures and are so slow that they would be increasingly vulnerable to fast long-range missiles being designed by China and Russia. China is developing over-the-horizon anti-ship missiles like the DF-21D with a range of more than 15,000 nautical miles. The carriers would be sitting ducks. Tellingly, Rishi Sunak's government recently decided to not send the Prince of Wales to the Red Sea to protect merchant ships from Houthi missiles, fearing that it was too vulnerable from attacks. The Carrier Strike Force and Trident nuclear missile system are Britain's most expensive military projects. Neither are relevant to the real threats facing Britain: terrorism, cyber attacks, drones, and overseas operations, and other forms of asymmetric warfare. Even expensive surface ships have been criticized as being a waste of money. Referring to attacks in the Indian Ocean, Lord Richards remarked to me, "We have 1 billion destroyers, 1 billion pound destroyers trying to sort out pirates in a little dough with RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades costing $50 with an outboard motor costing $100. So, sound about right? Sound about what we do too? You know?
Yep.
So, one respected commenter has gone as far as suggesting, do we really need a navy anymore? Far from being useful weapon systems, the carriers, like Trident, are little more than status symbols. So, thoughts?
Monkey see, monkey do.
Mainly. Yeah, I mean, it's also military-industrial complex and just stuck in their ways. Old generals and not understanding what actual warfare is now. You know, like America's military runs on this thing called supremacy, quote unquote. Right. Where it's like, you know, we have to be so much bigger than all the militaries combined in case of any outcome. Okay? So I don't know if that works anymore. And I think it's a giant waste of money. Clearly, the places with less money than us are having problems maintaining their versions of it. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring people to light that little bit of information. I found it interesting. So, but anyway, talking about these things is most likely why we're demonetized. So you can scan that QR code on your screen, go to co-fi.com/indienewsnetwork, you know, leave us a little dollary dues. You know, we might be able to buy one of those carriers if they go on sale. Who knows? But, you know, we'll take them for a massive loss. But if you can't help us monetarily, just like and subscribe, share the stream, comment underneath, tell us what you think. Are we full of shit? Are we not? We don't know. Let us know. You know? But otherwise, thanks for watching. All right. Anything left? We did everything.
I think we did
Okay, cool. Bye.
everything. I think we just won. Before we go, I think we should
check with our people listening.
Check with people and then share what we have coming up for the week.
Yep. And he said, I think he covered one of those Kit Larenberg articles before, probably. Anything else?
Don't think so.
I was looking for something. Would they ever do away with the Navy and the Coast Guard? Probably not. Submarines still carry nukes.
Nope.
So they will keep them around for that purpose. I'll show you a thing after this. You ever heard the idea of a backyard bomb?
No.
Okay, so why do we need lots of little nuclear weapons? I say little, they're massive. But why do we need lots of them? Why not one real fucking big one in our backyard? Right? Because if we're blowing everything up anyway, right? Why are we putting them on nuclear subs and, you know what I mean? Like, if something happens, we just press our, dead man switch. Like, that was already talked about in our military. So I wouldn't doubt that that's out there, But, it could be just in the middle of a mountain somewhere. We don't know, So, but anyway, someone was talking about, trying to look for it, something about carrier busters. They were nicknamed carrier busters by some sailors. I think those hypersonics. Just move real fast. Too much money gets laundered through the military. You can't slow down the machine. It's all America has left. So, yeah, a little bit. What's coming up this week, Care Bear?
So let's see. Tomorrow night, Snow Himbo will be on his new show, Snow Himbo Streams, tomorrow night at 9, Thursday. Friday, we got Angel in the afternoon at 7, followed by American Edition replay, which will be at 10:30. Saturday, we have Pro Wrestling Talk with Angel and Wishy Perfect at 8. Sunday, How Do We Missed Out with You and Indy at 10, followed by Boats at midnight or sometime after midnight, depending when you finish your show.
Yep.
Monday, we have the Maple Files with Himbo and Yeti at 8. Notice it's not 9, it's 8.
Yeah.
No American Tradition next week.
Working on Big 5-0 on that one, I think. So
right. So go watch that stream, by the way.
Yep.
And he had a great time, apparently. And then I guess we'll be on next week is Thanksgiving, so to be determined if we go live. Or if we do, it'll probably be abbreviated because you probably are cooking.
Oh, give or
More
take.
likely.
I got time.
Yeah.
So,
So we'll see.
Yep.
I'm not really cooking this year, by the way. So, or at least I'm not going to go for the effort of cooking like I have had in the past. It's just me.
Have your turkey flavored protein shake and call it a day?
No, I have a boxed food service that comes to me, and they had like a Thanksgiving thing.
Nice.
So I was just like, I figure I might as well just do that, and it's cheaper to do it that way and then buy the shit for me, which will be more expensive and takes like 2 days to prep and make versus like at
having
most
it done.
an hour. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it gives me time to do other things if I want to next week. So I just decided to do that instead. So that being said, if people invite me over to eat,
you'll do that. Well,
but at least I won't be spending 2 days in the kitchen cooking. So next week. So
well,
that's
hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving weekend. Also, shout out to our native people who don't like that day. Give them their time.
Well, we have Friendsgiving. Well, we have Friendsgiving this weekend. So those of you who do celebrate, enjoy that.
Yep.
And then
I know they always do a thing over at Plymouth Rock. Usually during that, the native peoples get out there. So keep an eye out for that. But, otherwise, remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.